What happens when three friends walk into the woods on a warm summer evening and are never seen again? The Ozark Mountains are beautiful but unforgiving. Rugged peaks, deep valleys, twisting rivers, and forests so dense that once you step inside, the sunlight itself seems to vanish. For decades, the Ozarks have been a place of both wonder and fear, a place where stories of missing hikers, unsolved mysteries, and dark secrets are whispered around campfires. But among them all, one story stands out. The story of three young friends who set out for a short camping trip and never came back. Their names were Ethan Cross, Maya Turner, and Logan Price. All three were 21. Childhood friends who had grown up in a small Missouri town at the edge of the Ozarks. Ethan was adventurous, the one always pushing the group into spontaneous trips. Maya was the careful one, the voice of reason who carried the first aid kit and maps. Logan was the joker, the one who kept everyone laughing even when things got tense. On the evening of June 14th, 2013, the three packed up Ethan's old pickup truck with camping gear, snacks, and a cheap cooler filled with beer. Their plan was simple: drive 2 hours into the Ozark National Forest, hike a short distance off the trail, camp for one night, and be back home the next day. They never returned. The disappearance. When the trio didn't come home on the 15th, no one thought much of it. Ethan had a habit of extending adventures, but by the 16th, families grew worried. Ethan's truck was still missing. Their phones went straight to voicemail, and none of the three had checked social media. A red flag for Maya, who was usually glued to her camera and posting constantly. By the 17th, their parents reported them missing. That same evening, police found Ethan's truck abandoned on a gravel road deep inside the forest, near a trailhead that wasn't commonly used. Inside were 3 backpacks, the cooler, half full, and all of their camping gear. But there was one thing missing: their cell phones. Authorities immediately launched a search and rescue operation. Helicopters scoured the woods, dogs were brought in, and volunteers fanned out across the thick underbrush. But the Ozarks are massive, stretching across millions of acres. The forest has caves, hidden cliffs, and waterways that swallow evidence whole. Days turned into weeks. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away from the truck. It was as if Ethan, Maya, and Logan had stepped into the trees and been swallowed whole. Rumors in town. As the official search slowed, rumors in their small town exploded. Some whispered that the three had staged their disappearance, run away to start new lives. Others said they were victims of foul play. Maybe a backwoods drifter. Maybe someone who didn't want trespassers on private land. A few locals muttered about something darker. Legends of the Ozarks. Stories of people who went missing, only for their bones to be found years later in caves, arranged in strange patterns. Hunters spoke of hearing voices at night, of shadows moving between the trees, of an old cabin that nobody dared approach. But none of that gave answers to the grieving families. The investigation. For detectives, one detail stood out. Why had they left their phones? Maya's mother insisted her daughter would never willingly be without hers. It was her lifeline. Ethan's sister said the same. Logan's phone had a cracked screen, but even he carried it everywhere. Yet when investigators pinged the last known locations, they found something chilling. All 3 phones had powered off around the same time. June 14th, 9:27 p.m. Not run out of battery. Powered off. Deliberately. Authorities suspected someone else had them, but who? And why? A cold case. Despite hundreds of leads, nothing concrete was found. With no bodies, no evidence of violence, and no clear trail, the case went cold. Years passed. Ethan's parents divorced under the strain. Maya's mother kept her daughter's room untouched, hoping she'd return. Logan's younger brother got into trouble with the law, always saying he felt like he was living in his brother's shadow. By 2019, most of the town had given up hope. The case file sat in a dusty cabinet at the sheriff's office, marked as unsolved. Until one summer day, everything changed. The discovery. It was July 2019, 6 years to the month since the friends had vanished. 2 hikers, an older couple, visiting from Arkansas, were exploring a section of the Ozark National Forest that was rarely traveled. The trail was overgrown, leading to a cave hidden in the side of a limestone cliff. Inside, it was cool and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing old beer cans, a torn sleeping bag, and then something that made them freeze in their tracks. A backpack. Faded, mold-covered, but intact. Inside were items that confirmed what they already feared. A driver's license, some clothing, and a cracked phone. The name on the ID, Maya Turner. Shock and panic. The couple rushed back to cell service and called authorities. Within hours, the FBI and local sheriffs descended on the site. They combed through the cave, gathering every piece of evidence. More was found. A set of keys, a shoe, and then bones. Not a full skeleton, but fragments, enough to confirm they belonged to a young adult. DNA testing would later prove they belonged to one of the three friends. But in that moment, the horror spread like wildfire through the town. After 6 years of silence, the forest had finally given up a clue. And yet, with answers came even more terrifying questions. Why were their belongings in a cave so far from the trail? Why did it take 6 years for anyone to stumble across it? And if this was where they ended up, what had happened that night in 2013? The FBI didn't believe it was an accident anymore. They believed they were looking at a crime scene. And as investigators dug deeper into what really happened in the Ozarks, they uncovered something far darker than anyone expected. Because the next discovery, just a few feet deeper into that cave, would unravel everything the families thought they knew, and finally expose the truth of what happened to Ethan, Maya, and Logan. The cave was silent, but to investigators it spoke volumes. The deeper they searched, the more they uncovered. Behind a pile of loose stones tucked into a crevice, they found something that turned the case from a mystery into a homicide investigation. A rusted hunting knife. The blade was still caked with traces of blood. And not just any blood. Later testing would show it contained DNA belonging to Ethan Cross. A crime scene revealed. The FBI cordoned off the cave for weeks. Evidence technicians carefully sifted through every inch, pulling out more fragments of bone, scraps of fabric, and even cigarette butts. One chilling detail stood out. The bones weren't all together. They were scattered, as if deliberately moved, or perhaps dragged. Nearby on the cave wall, faint scratches were discovered. Under enhanced light, they formed shapes, letters carved shakily into the limestone. It was incomplete, but investigators believed it was the start of a desperate message, and it was carved by hand. Had one of the friends been alive long enough to leave a final clue? Turning point in the case. For 6 years, the disappearance of Ethan, Maya, and Logan had been dismissed as a wilderness tragedy. Now, with DNA-confirmed evidence of foul play, the FBI reopened the case as a triple homicide investigation. The families were devastated all over again. Maya's mother fainted when agents confirmed her. Daughter's belongings were found in the cave. Logan's brother punched a wall so hard he broke 2 fingers. Ethan's father, who had grown bitter and withdrawn, sat silent as stone. But detectives pressed forward, determined not to let this cold case die again. They started with the last people to see the trio alive. Witness revisited. A man named Gary Holt, a local fisherman, had once told deputies he saw 3 young people near the trailhead. On June 14, 2013, at the time, it seemed unremarkable. Plenty of campers passed through. But with fresh eyes, FBI agents pressed him for details. That's when Gary remembered something odd. He recalled seeing another man near the truck that evening. Older, wearing camouflage and watching the group as they unloaded gear. At the time, Gary assumed it was just another hunter. But when shown photographs of known locals, Gary pointed at one without hesitation. "That's him," he said. The man's name was Dale Harker, the suspect. Dale was a 54-year-old recluse who lived alone in a shack on the edge of the forest. Locals knew him as the Hermit of the Ozarks. He had a reputation for threatening trespassers and was once arrested for brandishing a rifle at hikers. In 2013, Dale lived less than 2 miles from where Ethan's truck was found. Detectives had questioned him back then, but with no evidence linking him to the friends, they let it drop. Now, with DNA from the cave, they had grounds to dig deeper. When agents searched his shack in 2019, they found a trove of disturbing items. Knives, rope, and a collection of old phones. Some were burned, others dismantled. But one had a cracked screen and faintly scratched initials on the back. LP. Logan Price. The interrogation. Dale was arrested and brought in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, claiming the phones were junk he'd found in the woods. But when confronted with DNA evidence and Gary Holt's testimony, his composure cracked. Investigators later described it as a chilling confession. Dale admitted he had confronted the three friends that night, furious that they had camped on his land. Words turned into threats and threats into violence. He claimed Ethan tried to protect his friends, but Dale pulled a knife. The fight ended with blood on his hands. But what Dale described next horrified even seasoned agents. He didn't kill all three right away. He forced them into the cave, kept them there, watched them break down, and one by one their hope slipped away. The scratches on the wall, H-E, were likely Maya's last desperate attempt to leave a mark before the end. Justice after years. In 2020, Dale Harker was formally charged with 3 counts of murder, unlawful imprisonment, and evidence tampering. The trial drew national attention. Families of the victims packed the courtroom, clutching photos of their children. Prosecutors painted Dale as a predator who used the wilderness as his hunting ground. His defense tried to argue diminished mental capacity, but the jury didn't buy it. After just 4 hours of deliberation, Dale was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Closure, but not peace. For the families, the verdict brought some relief, but no real peace. Maya's mother said, "I'm grateful we know what happened. But I'll never stop hearing her voice in that cave trying to tell us something." Ethan's father, once silent, spoke publicly for the first time. "The Ozarks took my boy, but it also gave us the truth." Logan's brother, now a father himself, said he will one day take his own son to the edge of the forest and tell him the story, not to scare him, but to remind him to cherish every moment. The cave where the evidence was found has since been sealed off by authorities. Rangers warn hikers not to venture off marked trails, reminding them that the Ozarks hold beauty, but also secrets. And though justice was served, the haunting question that began this case still lingers. What happens when 3 friends walk into the woods on a warm summer evening and are never seen again? For Ethan, Maya, and Logan, the answer was finally revealed. But for countless other missing souls in the Ozarks, the forest keeps its silence,